Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We are going to give everyone a couple minutes just to transfer in from the waiting room before we get started, but we will be starting shortly. Thank you for coming. I hope all of you are enjoying this lovely spring day. All right, Nathan, it looks like most people have transferred over if we want to get started.
Yep, ready to go.
All right. Well, just so you guys know who attends a lot of the webinars with me, I'm Bethany Quinn, president of Golden Shovel Agency, and very happy to be here with all of you today. I normally control the screen, but my internet is glitching, so I'm asking Nathan to do this for me today. So it might be a little bit slower than normal as I give him prompts to move from screen to screen, so just bear with us. But Nathan, let's get going. Let's make sure we share some important insights into workforce today.
Sounds good.
All right. So, for those who are unfamiliar with Golden Shovel, we are a full service economic development strategy and communications firm. We have had the privilege of supporting economic developers throughout the country for over 16 years in over 43 states. Because of that, we're in a really unique position to know what's happening in the marketplace and to learn about trends and best practices that we want to share with you. And so today, as we are presenting information on how to really cultivate your homegrown talent to address your workforce needs, know that this comes from the data, the research that we've conducted, but also from conversations with really incredible economic developers throughout the country. Next slide. And I will tell you that we're really privileged that so much of our work has been featured and our clients have won awards at organizations like IEDC, including we're talking about workforce today. Preble County, Ohio, in a recent campaign, they were a finalist for their talent campaign with the state of Ohio, and we helped with that one as well. So it's always exciting to see our clients walk across the stage and get those awards. All right, so we're going to talk about building your workforce pipeline. This is an issue that continues to be incredibly pressing across the country. It is so rare that I literally almost fall out of my chair anytime I'm speaking with an economic developer who says, we have plenty of workers looking for jobs. We don't need to worry about this. It just doesn't happen anymore. And that's obviously a challenge in and of itself. And when we conducted a survey of economic developers across the country at the beginning of the year, one of the things that they really identified is that business retention was a huge issue for them. Business retention and expansion, and a heart of that very often was workforce and the need to be able to support existing employers to make sure that they have the talent they need in order to operate at full capacity, and then also to take advantage of growth opportunities. So while we know that attracting workers is definitely very successful, we've done a lot of those campaigns. We want to talk about your homegrown talent today because it can be faster and cheaper to tap into that talent first. And we know that for every $6.48 that's spent invested in the homegrown talent, for every dollar, excuse me, you're going to get a benefit of $6.48 in return. So the ROI is really clear as well. So it's good for your local employers, addresses a major BR&E concern, and there's proven ROI, and it keeps local families local so they don't have to move for jobs. It also means that the money they make is going to be more likely to stay in your community. They're not stopping for dinner somewhere else on the way home from their commute, for example. So workforce development and trends as far as who has talent, who doesn't, that is obviously something that continues to change because job numbers change, especially when we see volatile shifts in industries right now, some of them caused by AI and technology, for example, and then, of course, migration patterns. But the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, I keep sharing this map because I think it's such a great data tool. They have a tool where you go to their website, and you can just see what it looks like in your state at any given time. It's continuously updated. And that just gives you the ratio of the talent you have available to the number of jobs that are open. And, the other side of that, of course, though, is do the talent in your community, do they actually have the skills they need to fill those jobs? So, of course, it's two-sided. But I do think keeping an eye on this data is very helpful. There are, of course, continued trends with people leaving the workforce. We continue to see this with retirement, with education, people choosing to go back to school or staying in school longer, family responsibilities, disabilities, transportation barriers, and then, of course, there's sometimes invisible barriers to participation. I was reading the data collected by the St. Louis Fed, for example, and the biggest category is other. As far as reasons that people were leaving the workforce, that's not very helpful for economic developers. So sometimes we need to conduct our own research to figure out why people might be leaving in our own communities, just to get more of that granular level data that's actionable. The silver tsunami obviously continues to be a pressing problem. There are a lot of baby boomers that are turning 65 every day, a lot that are leaving the workforce. And of course, these numbers are going to continue to increase, which creates challenges when already companies are struggling to find talent. I have some more interesting insight from this population later, though. Also, there's skills gaps. That can be a major issue. Is people not able to continue in their employment because the economy is changing and then not being prepared for that next job, for what they're going to do next. So we're going to talk about some solutions today for closing that skills gap. And then, of course, youth outmigration. That is a concern that we hear from our clients all the time, is that young adults leave because they don't see the opportunity within the local community. We have some ideas for that, some best practices for that later. But oftentimes, if they leave, then they don't return. So how do we get them to come back? How do we get the boomerang workforce attraction, so to speak? So if they do leave and go to college, they come back later on. And there are some organizations that are doing a really incredible job of trying to get talent to come back. Bismarck Mandant, for example, Make Your Mark. If you guys haven't been to their website, they're doing a really great job. So that's a great case study in how you can really redefine the narrative of what your community looks like through the lens of people that are a little bit older now. I can tell you that what you feel like when you're 17 and making plans for your future is probably a little bit different than when you're in your 30s and you're married and have children. So they're really leveraging that change to be able to present their community in a new light to people who have those connections, but just didn't think of staying as a good idea when they were younger. And then, of course, there are a lot of invisible barriers, things like transportation, that sometimes can make it hard for people to fully work. But we're going to go through some state by state best practices for that later as well. All right, so let's talk about your local workforce, the hidden workforce. The reason why I call this hidden is simply because very often people are not aware that there are talent in their community or within their labor shed that would like to work for local employers, but simply aren't. It's interesting because we all know in economic development that the unemployment numbers, for example, don't tell the full picture. Workforce participation rates are the other side of that. And why is it? Sometimes we have to ask, why is it that people just aren't working when they could be? So making sure that we're able to increase workforce participation becomes a really important and pressing issue. I'm going to give an example to you next, if you want to go to the next slide, Nathan, of a community who I really wanted to share this because it's a small community, Forest City, Iowa. So they have a population of around 4,300 people, not a lot. And their labor shed is over 65,000. But that's what makes their study and their findings so incredibly compelling in my mind, because if in a community size this small, they're able to find that there are people that would be willing to work in their community at numbers high enough to make a really big impact on local employers. That gives me hope that a similar reality is probably going to be in your community. So their labor shed study found that out of their entire labor shed, there was over 15,000 people who would be willing to work in Forest City. That's significantly higher than the population of the community. So very compelling data. But beyond that, it's really interesting to look at the granular level data of where some of those people come from. So, for example, 658 unemployed persons, 506 homemakers, people who aren't looking for jobs right now, but said that they would like to go back to work. 481 retirees. Again, that silver tsunami information can make it seem like older people are not interested in working. We're actually seeing some different trends. We're seeing that a lot of retirees are finding that they just weren't ready. They decided they wanted to retire, but at the end of the day, maybe they're bored, or maybe they want to have some more adventures or try something new, or maybe they want to have a little bit more income for a while longer. There's a variety of reasons that retirees are interested in getting back to work. But we can see, even in this labor shed study, 481 persons can make a really big difference to your major employers, especially if you're in a smaller community. And the thing that's interesting about retirees is a lot of these people come with significant work experience and knowledge and expertise that make them a really great mentor for younger workers. So, very encouraging data from this. Also, 191 people out of that 4,300 that live in the city are commuting out for work and would rather work closer to home. Again, that's something that we see a lot, but very often the barrier there is that people who are commuting out, they may have gotten a job years ago. They've continued to stick with that job and just not realized that a similar opportunity that they would love to have is available at home because they're not actively looking for work. So, of course, that requires an educational component. So, one of the things that we're recommending is that you really conduct a talent interest survey of your community. This is something that you could do yourself with little or no cost. Of course, we help clients with stakeholder engagement all the time, but if you don't have the budget for that, you could create your own Google form or use SurveyMonkey, and you could ask some of those same questions that were asked to conduct this labor shed study, such as, if you were a homemaker, would you be interested in taking a job locally? And promote that survey online, send it out through your email blast, ask all of your contacts to promote it, especially in the nonprofit space, local churches, local organizations that interact with people all the time. Promote it on social media and run ads to promote the survey to try to increase participation. Just get as much data as you possibly can and be sure to collect their information. That way, if they do express that they are interested in working, you can follow up and help to connect them with local resources such as hiring managers or training opportunities. And make sure when you conduct the survey, you also ask what barriers they might be facing. So that way, if they are a homemaker, for example, who wants to go back to work, you can find out exactly what's preventing them from doing so. Or if they're a retiree, what challenges they're facing. And this is just a nice little graph from their labor shed analysis that really puts it in perspective. I mean, 56.4% of unemployed persons want to accept employment in the city. That's a big deal. I think a lot of times there can be a misconception that unemployed persons are not actually wanting to work. This tells a very different picture. It's just up to us as local economic developers to figure out what that barrier is, why they're not getting employment, and helping to solve it, helping to close that gap. Of course, in conjunction with our partners, because no economic developer can do it all on their own. All right. The other thing to consider is that local students, they're going to enter the workforce in some capacity. The question is how, and are they going to enter the workforce in your community? So there's some really interesting data that's come out of the Gates Foundation that I thought was really important to talk about today. You can see here that 70% of the students that they surveyed viewed on-the-job training as the best way to advance their career. That's really fascinating because it represents one of the shifts that we've been seeing away from formalized college education or formalized training programs. And it may be that some of that perception change is occurring because of how rapidly technology is advancing. And it's not just technology in the standard fields like IT, but we see it in advanced manufacturing where maybe a new robotics piece of equipment is coming out and that's changing how things are done. I interviewed someone for a podcast last week where we were talking about advancements in agriculture and how technology is very much changing how agriculture is done, and the modernization of it is kind of a next wave of what we saw previously in manufacturing shifts. So no matter what industry you're in, the reality is things are changing fast. And students are seeing that because just within their own high school experience, for example, they're just continuously experiencing change. So it makes a lot of sense that on the job training is now viewed as being one of the most important things to advance a career for a high school student or early college student. And that's really great insight for you to know as an economic developer, because it could shift how you have those conversations when you're doing high school career fairs. And 68% of them believe that certificates are needed to get a good job now, as proof that they can do the work. Again, really interesting shift. I mean, if you're going to a high school career fair or you're setting up programs such as tours of local businesses, this now needs to be part of the conversation. If you're bringing high school students to a business, you need to be talking about the type of on-the-job training that they provide. You need to be talking about the certificates that they can get to prepare for that job. I need water, guys. Sorry, Nathan, go back one slide. Okay, and then I wanted to point out that there are more students today who are worried that a college degree won't provide them with a good return on investment than those who do. Again, that's a very, very big shift. And you knowing that that concern exists when you're interacting with students in your K-12 system is going to really help you to provide that solution. Asking, are you afraid that if you go to college right now, you're not going to be able to get a job that's worthwhile? If so, here are some steps that you can take. Because sometimes the college degree is the right pathway, right? But maybe it's simply that you need to connect them with an employer for a summer internship program so they know they have a place to land. Obviously, this study was extensive and I only gave bullet points here, but that was one of the things that students elaborated on, is that if they had a job to come back to, then they would feel like the ROI was strong. They just weren't confident that a job would be there for their chosen education pathway when it was over. So really, that's great for economic developers who are worried about students leaving for college and not coming back. With that being a major concern, connecting them to an employer before they leave and helping that employer and student stay connected over the 4 years could not only give the student the ROI confidence, but it also builds that talent base, that employment base for the local employer, and helps you to maintain your population numbers. All right, so what are some of the frameworks we can put in place? So to build your local talent pipeline, we need to look at phase one, awareness. So how do we put real workers and career pathways front and center for people locally? How do we create awareness of what's possible in their home community? Because reputation becomes fact and very often it's wrong. A lack of awareness can become the reality. So it's really important as economic developers that you market to your own community, just like you're going to market outside of your community. Phase two, with engagement. We need to remove the barriers that keep people out of the workforce by engaging with talent directly. And then in phase three, we need to convert people from jobs that they don't really care about to ones that are going to be long-term careers that they love. And very often that's where on-the-job training and continued certificates and advancement programs come into place. So starting with phase one, let's talk about awareness strategies. How do we make sure the local community, the local talent, whether they are high school students or adults or even retirees who want to get back into work, how do we create awareness for what's possible in your community? So we really are fans of the success story. And the reason why is because a success story has the ability to share the story of someone who's already there locally, someone who people may see at the grocery store or maybe friends of a friend with. So there's relevancy there. It also allows you to share more detailed information on an obstacle they overcame in order to enter that successful career. So, for example, if you tell a story of someone who didn't have the right skills to get a job that they loved, their dream job, and these local partners help them to develop those skills, it is a demonstration to someone else in your community that it's possible for them to get that same support and get the skills they need for their job too. Or if something was solved, like a transportation barrier or a childcare barrier, it shows that that resource is available in your community. So we encourage using success stories as often as possible. As economic developers, when it comes to workforce, you may not have access to that information. So you need to go to your partners and make sure that you talk to them about it. Hey, what was your best success story? So and so at the technical college or major employers. What was your best success story for helping an employee advance? So get that information from them. At Golden Shovel, our talented team of copywriters create this content. Of course, if you have the time and capacity to do it for yourself, it's still important just to follow that format. What was the barrier? What did they do to overcome it? And what was the outcome? These are just some examples, of course, and publishing them on your website and social media is really important. Another thing that we're recommending is that you engage the local community to help you recruit more talent. So again, because it's awareness, if you have some people who have successfully entered an apprenticeship program, for example, asking them, creating a social media graphic that talks about what they did in their program and asking them to share it is a great way to do it. You need to give them the tools, ask them to share, make it easy so that way they can help to spread the word. Also, you could always establish a referral program where anyone who refers somebody for an apprenticeship program or job opportunities or what have you in your community is entered to win a gift card to some of your local restaurants or shops. Always good to support your local businesses. And of course, many of them would donate to that because there's always a chance that they might get employees through this campaign as well. We also recommend that you do view your talent as your full labor shed, not just what's within your community, but what is within driving distance of people who would likely commute into your community. This is just an example of Preble County and what they did to advocate for the fact that not only can you work here, but it's really great to spend time in our community as well, and you probably want to live here too. But use social media because social media is a very powerful tool to reach people within your radius. This video is a fantastic example of taking that success story, what was the opportunity, what was the challenge, what was the outcome, and turning it into video content that, especially for young people, is really a preferred choice of information gathering. You know, I could hear it in the practice session, but I don't hear it now. So let me just tell you, this woman is explaining her process from when she was first exposed to working in a support role to help people with varying abilities gain employment, to how she obtained the training necessary to have that job and the human resources side and human services, and then how she was able to work with a local employer. So it was really nice because you can kind of see the graphics here that they've even dropped in what the job duties are, and then what it took for her to gain that position. And this is a great video that is produced by the Greater Springfield Partnership, another Golden Shovel client. And you can find this, I believe, on clarkcounty.jobs if you want to see the example of what they produced. Really, really well done campaign. Also, you can see here at the bottom, it even says what level of education you need. This is another job that's coming up and how much money you can make. So again, they're showcasing local people in order to make it relevant as far as what does it take to get the job? What do you do in the job? How much money are you going to make? What's your impact on lifestyle? So there's a lot of different ways you can go with it. But the whole point is to personalize the opportunities because A job listing on Indeed, that's just not enough information. And if you're someone who hasn't had that job before, you don't know what that work entails. You don't know what the lifestyle is like, and you may not know what it takes to get it. So we really recommend stepping back and taking the time to develop story-based content for your most in-demand jobs. Virtual reality is another great way to do that because it connects people to what's possible by immersing them in that new environment. Again, you could tell everyone until you're blue in the face that advanced manufacturing is highly technical, but unless you're actually able to be on the floor and see people pulling out their iPads and giving instructions to machines and robots, you might not believe it. Seeing is believing when it comes to workforce opportunities, and traditional video is great at that, but virtual reality can sometimes be even better because it allows the user to actually move around, move their eyes, and see the full 360 experience and even try different pieces of equipment. So it provides a much deeper understanding of what's possible. We also find that it can be really good for attraction in the sense that it can get people excited. So I recommend that everyone watch Broken Arrow's virtual reality talent attraction videos. They produce those. Golden Shovel help with this for medical field, emergency management, and manufacturing. But one of the things that I really thought was so well done is the ability to tell the story holistically. So, for example, in the emergency management portion, which by the way, that picture at the bottom is someone scaling down the wall in a training exercise. They not only went through what the jobs entailed, but they also did this kind of high impact, high energy training exposure, which is really cool. You're literally seeing them scale down and rescue a dummy from what would be a burning building. But they're also going into some of the lifestyle aspects of the job. So they're actually take people into the fire station, which is brand new, and they're in the gym and they're working out with the other firefighters. And I think that's really creative and really important because especially for the younger generation, it's not just about going to work and getting a paycheck, but it's about making sure that they're going to enjoy their time when they're there, that it's going to fit who they are as a person in some way. So I encourage you to maybe think a little bit outside the box as far as what it means to expose people to jobs and professions and not just focus on the tasks that are required, but also the benefits and the things that are surrounding it. In some cases, like healthcare, because we've done a lot of these in healthcare, it's exposing nurses, to example, what it can be like to work at a non-major metro hospital to demonstrate that the latest equipment is there, that the facilities are incredibly nice, incredibly well done, just because there sometimes can be reputation issues that you have to overcome.
Did you want to play the video?
You can try it. The last sound didn't come on. Why don't we give it a go? See what happens.
I'm gonna play it on YouTube so we can actually look around.
When
Awesome.
waiting for a call, first responders can relax in the common area or rest in the 6 modern semi-private bunk rooms. They can also use the physical fitness space to work out. When a call comes, first responders jump into action. The
And
three
you can see how you even can add different words to the screen to tell people where to go or what to do. Those can be embedded to kind of create more of an experience as
for the
well.
first responders to triage residents and provide support until they reach the hospital. Broken Arrow first responders are some of the best in Oklahoma because they receive top-notch training. The Broken Arrow Fire and Police Training Center is a 20-acre complex that supports more than 170 firefighters and trains police cadets. Training is a critical aspect of the fire service. Even the most experienced firefighters and paramedics frequently visit the training facility to learn new skills and refresh their knowledge.
Yeah, that's perfect, Nathan. Thank you. So again, you can see that you have the opportunity to really bring in the physical aspects of the job and also what the lifestyle is like. And again, this is really important when you're trying to expose people to a profession that they know nothing about. We have found that students will line up to try the goggles on, and it really becomes the most popular thing at a career fair. So that in of itself is really cool, and people remember it. Versus a flyer they may take and throw away. Once they put the goggles on, they have that experience, they're going to be talking about it. You can also bring them into the classroom, which has worked well. And aside from just students too, there are communities that are taking mobile buses and units into the community so that way they can reach students and adults with new workforce opportunities. Montgomery County, Ohio is one that has done that very successfully. Rural Minnesota SEP has done this successfully. And in Tracy, California, their Volt on the Go is doing the same thing. So it's instead of waiting for people to come to them, they are going out into the community and maybe going to local events and festivals or schools or parks, wherever people happen to be, and then inviting people to come in to try on the goggles and to learn about in-demand jobs. And then, of course, if they're interested, connect them with what it takes for the next step as far as training and hiring manager relationships. All right, so engagement strategies for workforce development. Obviously, that is the second component of this, right? We looked at people wanting to get to work, and sometimes a skills mismatch is the problem with local talent. So one of the things that I wanted to highlight is the change that I'm sure many of you are aware, but just in case you're not, workforce Pell Grants is now easier to get the money that you need in order to get that training, to take in-demand jobs and to take them quickly. So FAFSA funding has been expanded to allow for training programs that can be conducted in a couple weeks. And one of the things that's really cool, and I highlighted and underlined this so we don't miss it, is the discussion on grants being available to help pay for living expenses. Because let's face it, one of the big barriers to people is the fact that if they're going to school for 8 weeks, that's 2 months. How do they pay rent? How do they buy groceries? Not everyone has parents who are, able to help them to cover those bills. And if you, of course, that's if you're young. If you are an adult with family responsibilities of your own, if you're in a low wage job, you don't have savings. You don't have the money to cover the time away from work. A lot of people are living paycheck to paycheck. So this funding expansion is what I think it's incredibly important for helping people to have the freedom and flexibility they need to take more meaningful, higher wage, in-demand jobs. Now, the grant itself, I believe, is either 43 or 4,800. I forgot to add that exact number. I did put a link here at the bottom, though, in case you need to see that later. So in some instances, it may mean that a worker is going to also need to get some support for training costs from the employer who could be hiring them, right? But that's the type of thing that as economic developers, you facilitate all the time. If the majority of that grant is needed to pay for some of those soft costs and employers willing to pitch in for additional training coverage, but they get an employee in 8 weeks, win-win for most employers. They're willing to do that. And this, of course, is specific to high demand jobs. So I gave a few examples of what that looks like. But for IT, cybersecurity, and software, for healthcare, it's more of those entry-level positions like an EMT or a phlebotomist. For those who don't know that word, it's people who take your blood. Yep, doesn't make sense to me either. They should have a non-complicated name, but phlebotomy. Skilled trades, it could be your CDLs and your HVAC. So it really can apply to in-demand jobs in your community, but bottom lining it, people get money to take care of their needs, not just the physical cost of training, so they can get trained up and get to a higher paying job quickly. So that's great news. All right, so some of the best practices that we're seeing across the country we wanted to highlight here. Obviously, it's a short webinar, so you can get more in our white paper. But in Washington State, there is a requirement for, actually in the apprenticeship programs, for health aides. In some states, like where I live in Maryland, you don't have to have a license to be a home health aide. But in Washington State, where my aunt ran an assisted living facility, you did. You had to go to school, you had to have that training, you had to pass a test. So what they did is they made it easier by starting an apprenticeship program for home health aides. Another thing they did in Washington State was create a high school nursing assistant program to help people get into rural health care. We are also seeing on the apprenticeship side in Kansas, I mean, they're putting their money where their mouth is in Kansas. They're providing tax credits and direct grants to employers to help with apprenticeship programs. And that's per person that's enrolled. So that's pretty significant opportunity that other states may want to consider emulating to help to incentivize local employers to create those programs. In West Virginia, they have a new way to count apprenticeship hours towards an associate degree. So that's also really exciting because it means that if you are debating between the two, do I want to go into an apprenticeship program? Do I want to go into college? People are able to get into the workforce faster through the apprenticeship program, but it doesn't close the door on their post-secondary education. They can still continue on and earn their degree without feeling like they were penalized in any way for choosing the apprenticeship path first. So I thought that was really innovative, and that's also something that doesn't require you to have a big budget of money to go towards workforce. It's more about a legislative change and coordination with community and technical colleges. On the education side, because teacher shortages, of course, are also happening throughout the country, we're seeing that Delaware has an innovative program that's an earn and learn program for aspiring teachers. Again, it goes back to the reality that people have to pay their bills. And so sometimes continuing on with your education, finishing that program can be challenging. Delaware is making that less challenging by making sure people can make money while they're still learning to be a teacher. And in Connecticut, they're pairing new teachers with mentors. So, we talked about people feeling like on-the-job training was the most important to their success. 70% of students felt that way. Pairing new teachers with mentors is one of the ways to help new teachers feel like they're going to be successful long-term. Disabled workers is a category of persons that is very often overlooked, but can represent a huge source of talent in all of our communities. We have some stats on that later, actually. But in Connecticut, they are helping to encourage employers to reach into that community and hire from it by providing tax rebates and also contracting preferences to companies that hire disabled workers. In Illinois, they are getting involved at the high school level. So before a disabled student graduates, it's now a requirement that at the school, they are exposing the student and their parents to the CTE opportunities and those pathways. So that way there hopefully is more of a set plan and students start to receive that training so that they can obtain and secure employment after graduating from high school. Going further on to the K-12 side, so what are people doing before they graduate? Idaho's program I thought was really interesting because they are giving students up to $8,500 in grants that they can use to earn dual credit while in high school. So that's great if you know you want to go to college, but you're worried about affordability. So great potential benefit there. Or they could take that money and use it to complete workforce training. So that way, when they graduate high school, they do have the skills, the certificate, as students have asked for, and that data we shared earlier, that they need to take that job right away. So they get to graduate high school, workforce ready, and they don't have debt because they would have gotten that grant. So really exciting program in Idaho. In Indiana, that was really interesting because they decided at the state level that we don't want to wait until high school for workforce development. We want to expose people in elementary and help to identify what they're interested in and then help direct them into different types of training and educational opportunities before they graduate so they are ready for their career. So, students may change their mind, but I think it's fantastic that Indiana is giving exposure at an early age because it does allow young people to really narrow down what they like. If you're exposed to it in middle school, for example, you may change your mind and still have time to then find another career path that you can do in the community. So great idea in Indiana. In Maryland, they have now mandated that at the high school level, all students must know about workforce training programs. It is now a requirement. So, educators and staff are not allowed to assume students know or just direct them to a college. They also have to talk about workforce training opportunities. And then in Virginia, they've actually developed a program for summer and after school workforce programs. The summer programs, I think, is a fantastic idea. A lot of kids are looking for things to do in the summer anyway. A lot of parents are looking for camps. This is a great way to say, hey, you're free already. Let's expose you to workforce training and opportunities. Now, this, of course, is for students, but the reality is if you are an adult, you probably have family obligations and responsibilities, and it may be those obligations and responsibilities that are preventing you from getting additional workforce training. So states are tackling this differently. Some examples here in Oregon, they allocated a lot of funding for sector-specific childcare because they wanted to grow their chips industry. Now, I think most people on the call realize that childcare is a need no matter what industry you're working in, but sometimes there are opportunities to tap in dollars that are specific to a new program, a new industry, a new target at the state level, and so that's where Oregon has allocated their efforts. If that bucket of money is available for you and it can't serve everyone, but it can serve a particular industry, it's still worthwhile to pursue that because at least it tackles one of your challenges and maybe frees up more childcare spots in other industries as people shift. In Arizona, they are offering on-site childcare, transportation, and job placement assistance to unemployed persons who want to gain more skills. In New Mexico, they are actually developing workforce housing near employment centers so people can access those jobs faster. And in Nevada, they have a program that is a requirement now that if you are receiving social services support, you also now at the state have to receive employment and wraparound support services to help you get to work. All right, and then virtual reality again. We keep beating the drum on this just because it's something you can invest in one time and then it's available for your use forever. Virtual reality is used not just for talent attraction, it's also used for workforce development. So this example that Nathan will show in a minute actually is a great example of workforce safety training. Obviously, OSHA, workforce safety, so important. If these videos are there to help with safety training protocols, it means the local employers, their trainers are freed up to train people in other areas, which again, talent resourcing is sometimes a very important aspect of that component. So how can we use technology to free up people's time to do what technology can't do? And so with safety training, with repetitive tasks, with training on new equipment, company tours and culture, those are workforce development pieces and training pieces that can be moved into a virtual environment to free up trainers for other things. Also industry niches, right? So we're seeing this a lot in oil and gas as an example, where some of the training on equipment can be very complex. It has to be done often in that environment. Doing it virtually through VR gives people exposure to that initial training before they show up and they have to be trained on site. And again, the same thing, whether you're manufacturing or whether you're alignment, as you're going to see here in a minute, this also can be great just to make sure people have the basics down.
Keep everyone at least 50 feet clear of the scene.
What I love about this video, when Golden Shovel created it, is that you're actually going to be able to see, as you did a second ago, the radius for what's safe in order to approach the vehicle. So you can imagine that if you're an emergency first responder, if you're a lineman, you show up to a scene like this. If you don't have this training, you could get electrocuted. I mean, this could be life or death. So keep scrolling around, Nathan. So you see literally, this red no-go on top of them is showing what is conducting electricity and where they could actually get hurt.
For the moment, if they remain in place, you should never approach the vehicle before the lines have been confirmed as de-energized.
And the video keeps going. It's really robust, but you can just imagine how this could be useful. And so many different industries to provide that first level exposure to training.
As it heard.
All right, you have to build a system. You can't do this alone. So economic developers, I love you guys. You wear so many hats. I am impressed every single day by the people that I work with and speak with who are literally trying to tackle all the challenges of their community, often with teams of 2 or 3. So you guys are doing an incredible job, but this is just a reminder that it does take a team, and we encourage you to please tap into your local resources. So let's dig into that. So first, it helps to know what barriers you have to address. So according to the St. Louis Fed, again, some of the biggest reasons people are out of the job market right now is 21% have caregiving responsibilities. This is more acute in the 25 to 55-year-old range. 15% have health issues. Now, I do want to, again, point out, we talked about what some states are doing to get disabled persons to work. A health issue that requires you not to work is very different than having a disability that allows you to work with an accommodation. And that is where a lot of opportunity is missed. There may be accommodations such as people needing to sit instead of stand, people needing to take more often bathroom breaks, people needing to be able to have visual aids or mobility solutions. But there are people that are able to work and want to work in the disabled community if employers would just be accommodating to their needs. And as an economic developer, those are conversations you could be leading with your local employers to help create those opportunities and possibilities. Other barriers that they found of transportation, this is across all age groups. I did put it in this next one, employers thinking they're too old for the 55 plus category. This was such great data gathered by the St. Louis Fed because, again, it goes back to the numbers I showed you very early on with Forest City's labor shed study, that there were hundreds of retirees that actually did want to work. They wanted to be back in the workforce. So sometimes ageism can be a thing where employers just don't even interview people that are older or don't consider them for a position. Again, as an economic developer, you can lead in those conversations. And it may be that if an older person just needs to be trained on the latest technology, you can help to make that happen by working with your workforce partners. No work available in the area. That was another concern that was experienced by people in their area of expertise. And that was pretty much all ages 25 up. So that again speaks to a skills gap. Maybe the job that they had previously is no longer in demand. So using that workforce Pell Grant, for example, might be a great way to get them retrained. And then lacking the necessary training, that was something that 18 to 24-year-old category felt more acutely. And again, there are resources now to help with that. So barriers to growth, why people quit. Because once someone comes to a company, the goal is obviously to retain, because your local employers are going to be able to grow and stabilize a lot faster if they don't lose employees. So according to the ADP People at Work 2025 report, there was a decent amount of people, 19%, that felt there was not an opportunity to advance at their company. Sometimes that's a communication piece, so you may want to bring that up in your BR&E visits and ask, what are you doing to let your talent, your employees understand what advancement opportunities exist? And then corresponding to that, 15% said they're going to have to change a job in order to get ahead. So from a BR&E perspective, that's a problem that has to be addressed by communication, because your local employers probably can't afford to lose people. Now, on the workforce attraction front, that creates an opportunity for you in economic development. If you are trying to recruit people that are working in your labor shed into your home community, you may want to consider leading with stories and explanation of job opportunities that are advancement rather than entry level, just to try to get people to see that you do have that pathway in your community. 12% don't have time due to responsibilities. We kind of talked about what some of those barriers are. 8% don't have the confidence. So sometimes you may want to consider doing a workshop in your community. How do you advance your career? And doing some soft skill building. 8% don't have the experience, 6% don't have the skills, and 5% don't have the right education. Again, as an economic developer, you are a convener of resources and partners. That is your opportunity to shine, to help those people who want to advance get the training they need. All right. So building your plan. We have this outlined in much further detail in our white paper, and I'm old enough to not do death by PowerPoint, so I'm not going to bore you guys here. But we do give you step by step as far as what we think you should do to build your plan and to build your coalition and your structure. So that way you can implement successful homegrown workforce campaigns. Same thing, common pitfalls to avoid. We list those out in detail in our white paper. And how we can help. So at Golden Shovel, we conduct stakeholder engagement, and we would be happy to help you to engage your local talent, your employers, your workforce partners to help you create that plan. We can also help you with the storytelling side to make sure you're communicating with your local residents as far as opportunities that are available in their community using tools like a robust town website, social media, digital ads, video, success story creation, you name it. And of course, virtual reality. We do have an entire VR production team that would be happy to assist you. And lead forensics. We recommend this tool so that way you can see where people are coming from geographically when they visit your website. When you're looking at a full labor shed campaign, this can help you to better allocate your ad spend because you can tell where your message is resonating the most. Ultimately, we love running talent attraction campaigns, but we also know that it can take $10,000 to $25,000 to recruit somebody new to your community. It's a lot more affordable often to start from home, especially since a lot of these resources have a one-time cost, and once they're built out, they can continue to maintain. You know, things like the virtual reality videos, social media campaigns, success story creation, all of that, you know, once the strategy is in place, that's a one-time expense, and then you continue to operate it within your office. So there's a lot that can be done to help bring local people in contact with local employers. And we do hope that if you go to the next slide, Nathan, you download our white paper so you can get even more best practices and go more in depth than what we had time for today. I do want to stop speaking now so that we can answer some of your questions, though, because I see that there are some. If you want to read them out, Nathan.
Yeah, the first two are both about the Forest City survey.
Yeah.
First one is, how long did the Forest City have its survey in the field? Was there an expected response rate, numerical or percentage-wise, and was statistical validation of interest?
Yeah, so those are really great questions. I do not have all the answers for you because Golden Shovel did not do this work. This was actually created by the Iowa Workforce Development Labor Market Information Division. That is a mouthful. So I do believe they were working on this for close to a year as far as those more extensive details. Our client who had this labor shed study conducted is Winworth Betco. And I do recommend visiting their website because they have a lot more information on this just on their website. And again, that's Winworth Betco in Iowa. In regards to statistical validation, because this was done by the State Department. Again, I can read the mouthful again, but it's Labor Market Information Division. So I guarantee you they have statisticians on staff that are very much validating the information that was found.
The second question, you already answered the first part, was whether Golden Shovel conducted that Iowa survey. Second part of the question is, can we do something like that for their community?
We'll be happy to chat with you, whether we work with you directly or connect you with partners. Whoever it is, Nathan, if you want to get their email address, I'd be happy to follow up with them.
Yeah, if it's submitted anonymously, but if you want to share that, we would love to reach out to you. Next question, how do I reach these disparate groups, high school students, retirees, etc.? Can I use local festivals, events, other things like that for awareness and recruitment?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to share the examples of Montgomery County, Ohio and Tracy, California, because they are 100% going into the community, setting up their mobile bus, but it could also just be a tent with a table at local festivals and parks and anywhere people are likely to be. I've had the pleasure, of course, of working with communities of all sizes, some that are as small as like 2,000 people. And I've never, ever encountered a community that doesn't have festivals or doesn't have community events. So I feel like no matter what size of community you are, this opportunity does exist. In addition, we're seeing some really cool activities involve career fairs at the high school level. So that's where you obviously want to recruit and interact with the younger folks. Roswell, New Mexico, for example, they had a great one where they brought in a lot of local employers and they had hands-on activities for students to try in addition to the virtual reality. So it made that connection pathways. I know a lot of our clients in Ohio are starting that process at the middle school level and some even at the elementary school level, where they're actually economic developers and workforce partners and business leaders are going into the classrooms in addition to having full school engagement events. Shelby County, Kentucky, with the VR work we did for them, they did it classroom by classroom basis with high school students. So it really comes down to talking to the staff, the principals at your schools, and seeing what works best for them. As far as retirees, we recommend starting with social media. So one of the largest groups of people on Facebook are people that are over the age of 55. So that's actually a really great platform to meet with them. Some people have been successful with hosting community coffees, for example, stop by for coffee and donuts and advertising it to that older population. Come have coffee and donuts. We'll have some hiring managers there. We're going to have information on local opportunities and talk about what you're interested in. Just making it a really casual, low pressure engagement opportunity. And also that's low cost, right? Coffee and donuts at a local cafe or at your office.
Next question. My rural community relies on grants for economic and workforce development. This presents challenges in terms of sustained marketing and attraction BR&E efforts. Can you provide any advice or help?
Yeah, so that is a challenge, right? Money, time, and staff to get all of this work done. And as an economic developer, that is a strain that you're experiencing, and most people are. So we do recommend, if you can, to look at working with an organization like RDG, a Convergent company. They're a partner of ours who does help to raise capital from the local community for community growth. So if you think about it, your local employers have the most to gain by you being able to fund workforce development and attraction work. So organizations like RDG, a Convergent company, what they do is they are able to help raise capital from the local business community to fund that scope of work so that you can provide them with the resourcing they need. Other than that, obviously grants, of course, are an excellent opportunity, but they're just not as reliable. Whereas if you have local employers who are contributing to the initiative, they can sign up and agree to give a set amount every year, which enables you to then hire a staff person, for example, which is kind of difficult to do with a one-year grant. Did we get them all, Nathan?
Sorry. There's a lot of resistance to any new businesses coming into my community. How can I counter this NIMBYism?
And we are seeing that everywhere. The survey we conducted, I believe it was 80% or around 80% of economic developers all throughout the country were saying that business retention and expansion and concerns about businesses coming in was their number one issue. So good news, bad news. Good news, it's not just you. Bad news, it's not just you. We do recommend that you start with the basics, and that is stakeholder communication and engagement. We call that EcoDevo 101, and we've really successfully ran that for some of our clients. Wyandotte County, Kansas, for example, they have a great EcoDevo 101 program. And what we've been able to do for them is to actually go into the local community and to conduct interviews and create case studies from their local businesses that have demonstrated how that local business has benefited from a new company coming in, from investment being made. So as an economic developer, you're probably providing impact analysis on job creation and investment, but do people read it? Probably not. Right? Like it's who's looking at those spreadsheets, who's looking at those numbers. Even in a press release, it sounds great, but if you don't have any connection to your business, then you might blow it off. So by being able to share the story of, okay, business X came in and business Y, who was already here, was able to be a partner of theirs. And it grew their business by X%, and they were able to hire 5 people. Or this, hardware store was able to supply all of the materials for this project, and what the impact on their business was. That all of a sudden personalizes the benefit to the community. The other side of that is that a lot of economic developers are being creative with their attraction when a company's coming in and negotiating good deals up front. So if you're coming in as a business, what can you do that's going to help with local childcare? For example, can you put a childcare facility at your location that will also be open to other people? Then you tell that story. You lead with that story. Or how can you help with transportation? Or are you going to give a certain amount of money to nonprofits? Then you need to have those nonprofits talk about the grants they're receiving and what they're going to do with the money and the impact that's going to have on the community. So our recommendation is that you need to start with the impact to people who are already there and tell that story in a way that relates to them rather than numbers. And then you talk more about the company that's coming in, but focus on impact first.
Last question we have here is, drug addiction is a big issue in my community and workforce. How can I help employers deal with a workforce that is often unreliable?
So one of the things you may want to consider is starting younger. So I gave an example of the Virginia program as a state best practice, where they're doing after-school programs and summer programs for workforce development. One of the reasons that they created that program was actually to combat youth violence. So it's not the same as drug addiction, but it does often have similar roots: violence and drugs. It's not having kids into a positive environment where they have goals and they have things that they need to work for. So my educational background is human development and psychology, and one of the most important things that you can actually do for people is to help them to have a goal. Because if they have a goal and they see a pathway to achieve that goal, they're less likely to make risky decisions, which is really key, especially when we're looking at that young adult population between, say, 16 and 25, when their prefrontal cortex is fully developed and they don't have the ability to think through those long-term consequences. So you need to reach people at that early age. And that really does involve oftentimes going into the schools, creating those after school programs, and connecting people with what's possible in a way that they feel excited and they feel energized. So it's not work you can do on your own as an economic developer, but it's really important to build those coalitions and start having those conversations so you can reach people early. We get through it, Nathan?
We got through it. We don't have any other questions. We just have a couple of suggestions here from somebody in the audience.
Okay.
Check out your local American Job Center. They can help with outreach, and many have VR headsets available. And then Childcare Aware of America is the National Child Care Resource and Referral Agency. They also have a National Care Finder and lots of facts on childcare.
Thank you for sharing that resource. I love when our audience shares more information with folks. Also, just so you know, there are more childcare white papers on goldenshovelagency.com website. We had some webinars a couple years ago that actually brought in people from the resource you're talking about, so you can find that recorded information there as well. But ultimately, we are here for all of you. We absolutely love the opportunity to help you build resilient and thriving communities. So if you have questions, just reach out. Laura Christie's information is here. You can reach out to her. You can also connect with me, Bethany Quinn. That's bquinn at goldenshovelagency.com. And if you have success stories to share, please let us know, because maybe we want to have you on a podcast or write a story about what you're doing so other people can learn from your success. Thank you all.